Peter and I saw a wasp nest in the cam light on the porch just above where my dogs sunbathe outside. And I looked around some more, and actually they were hanging out in many of the recessed lighting fixtures we have. Well, fortunately, our friend Dr. Robert Reed is with us today. He's medical director of VCA Animal Hospital in Rancho Mirage, California. Welcome back, Robert.
Hey, Lori. Nice to talk to you.
Robert, how do I know if my dog has been stung by a bee or a wasp?
Well, it's a really good question. It's not an uncommon problem. It might be worth taking a minute to talk about the difference between wasps and bees, ants and scorpions, if you'd like, and kind of go over the relative risk of each.
Please.
So most of the encounters that are the stings that we encounter are from bees, specifically honeybees. Honeybees and bumblebees and wasps and hornets or even ants are all part of the same group of insects that carry venom and that sting as opposed to biting. And wasps and hornets are pretty much the same thing. A hornet's just a different variety of a wasp. Bees are a little bit different in the type of venom that they have. Each of the different groups of animals has a little bit different venom. And, a dog's tendency to react allergically is not necessarily the same for one as it is for the other, although dogs can have allergy to all of them, but they may not. They may only react to one of them. Wasps are less commonly seen than honeybees, which is mainly a function of the numbers. So just more individuals in our local environment of honeybees in most people's households and neighborhoods than wasps. But wasps and hornets can be more problematic in the sense that they are more aggressive than honeybees because they're predators, and they'll actually be agitated to go after a dog more easily than a honeybee might. A honeybee is only likely to sting if it's been annoyed. So if a dog noses up to it while it's feeding or steps on it or tries to bite it or eat it or happens to wander near a hive unknowingly, then they may get attacked by honeybee. But the reaction that you would see in a dog is going to be pretty similar for either a bee or a wasp. So most likely it's going to be just a little bit of swelling and pain and redness at the site of the sting. Sometimes the swelling can be a little bit more regional. It can involve more of the area of the body than just the site of the sting. But those are both going to be grouped into local or focal type reactions, which are less dangerous. They should still be addressed and treated, but less dangerous than a reaction that's systemic or affecting all of the body or different parts of the body away from where the sting occurred. Those can be as severe as anaphylactic reactions where a dog might collapse within maybe 10 or 15 minutes from a drop in blood pressure. They can have vomiting and diarrhea, trembling, a number of different effects from that. Other systemic type of infections that could develop over the first few hours after sting are things like hives or swelling around the face. And any of those systemic reactions could be construed as an allergic reaction and potentially severe, in some cases, life-threatening.
When does a bee sting require emergency vet care?
It's a good question, and one we get a lot. Because of all the different types of reactions that can occur, most veterinarians would say anytime you know or suspect your dog has been stung by a bee or wasp, you have it checked out and get it in as quickly as possible, either to your local veterinarian or to an emergency pet hospital, because you just really don't know what course it's going to take. The majority of them are going to be non-life-threatening, where you'll just have local swelling that needs to be treated with antihistamines, anti-inflammatories, maybe some steroids, and pain relievers. We'll occasionally use fluid treatments or epinephrine, depending on the severity. But if it turns out to be a more severe systemic reaction, it could involve hospitalization and much more aggressive therapy, because the potential danger can be much greater for some, not many, but some individuals.
If I see the stinger, should I try to pull it out?
Another good question. Yeah, it's only going to be, honeybees are the only ones that lose their stinger. And most of the stings we see are from honeybees. You should try to get it out, but there's you should be careful in the way that you try to remove it, because when a honeybee's stinger is pulled away from its body, it actually kills the bee, and it pulls out usually the venom sac with it. So if you squeeze it, you might actually inject more venom into the site. So you should use something like a flat card. Most people use a driver's license or a credit card or something like that to just scrape it away so that you can pull it out without having to squeeze it.
Whether we see a stinger or not, we should contact our veterinarian.
You should, yeah, because again, many times these don't develop into anything serious, but sometimes they do, and there's not really a good way to know which direction it's going to take.
Right.
And for dogs who we know are already prone to allergic reactions, they may even want you to have other treatments on hand in case something happened that needed more immediate attention than you could get by taking it into the vet.
How about the dangers of multiple bee stings, like running into a beehive or a swarm of bees?
Multiple bee stings, and particularly in a smaller dog, can have a much more severe effect. But most of the time, it's an allergic reaction that poses the greatest threat, because it's uncommon for a dog to get that many bee stings. Yes, it's possible that a dog, if it approached inadvertently a beehive, or particularly one that had Africanized bees in it and a lot of bees attacked at once, or if it came near a hornet's nest. Some species of hornets and wasps do have social nests, and they also can attack in groups. And in fact, sometimes the act of stinging or trauma to one of the individuals can stimulate others to become more aggressive. So you can get multiple bee stings if that happens. It's a good idea to know. I always tell people when we're trying to reduce the risks of things that our dogs can encounter in the environment, it's a good idea to know what's in your environment. And this applies to bees and wasps, of course, but also to things like snakes and coyotes that, can always pose a risk if we're not careful. You just really should know what's in your environment. And if there's a wasp nest or a beehive in the vicinity of your yard, you should know about it. And you should either avoid it or take measures to have it moved if it's a beehive, or even potentially eliminate it if it's a hornet's nest or a wasp's nest. That should always be done by a pest professional, because it can be dangerous otherwise. Not only should you know where those things are if you have a hive or a nest in your vicinity, but you have to think about time of day when you might encounter bees, areas in the yard where you might more likely to have, where bees are more likely to congregate. Certainly the time of year can have an effect as well. Bees normally are active in the late morning, and particularly in climates where there's some seasonality, they're going to be more active in the spring. Obviously, they're going to be around flowers because they feed on pollen and nectar, so they're going to congregate around their food source. But sometimes in a hot climate where we are, on a hot afternoon, they're going to be looking for water. These are all things that they carry back to their nests or their hives. And if an area of lawn, for instance, has just been watered and it's damp, then you could find a lot of bees there. And you should be aware of that, because your dog could be walking around on a surface that has actually bees resting on it trying to get water. We see a lot of bee stings in our environment, in our climate, in the fall, or when we have warm days and cool nights, so fall and spring, because bees can be away from the hive and just not make it back. They're either weak, they're near the end of their lives, or the weather gets cool, and they don't die, but they're on the ground and they can't necessarily make it back to the hive. They can still sting if the dog is nosing around on the ground and happens to pick one up in his or her mouth. That's a time when we often see those, and knowing when bees are going to be in the environment and where can really help you avoid those situations.
I imagine stings on or in the mouth or throat could be quite dangerous due to swelling of the airways.
Absolutely, yeah. Even if it's not an allergic reaction, if there's significant swelling in the mouth or the throat from a sting in that area, it can compromise breathing, which can be dangerous.
Do cats get stung too?
They do. We don't see them very often. Cats would have basically the same symptoms. I would think more likely a cat would have stepped on it. It might be shaking its paw or or limping or have swelling, I think it's likely or more likely they might have eaten it. So you'd see drooling, swelling around the mouth, pawing at the mouth. The treatment would be very similar to what we would do with dogs, but it's uncommon for us to see bee stings in cats. It can happen, but it's more a dog thing than a cat thing.
Any final thoughts?
Well, again, I think that the most important thing with bees particularly is to remember that they are, an important part of our environment. And, especially in California where we are, people have recognized the value that they have for not just, environmentally, but economically. And we really want to do what we can to preserve bees in our environment without, having to kill them. And we want them around for a lot of reasons. On the other hand, we don't want them endangering our pets. And therefore, it's important for us to recognize what parts of our environment may be risks to our pets and try to understand them so that we can do our part to reduce the chance that they're going to have a bad interaction.
Dr. Robert Reed, thank you very much.